talk about AI, okay? And I know it's not exactly a subject that's not being talked about at the moment, but right now, AI is officially this, hot shit. It is absolutely everywhere. You haven't seen this slide, have you? I snuck it in the final edit. Yeah, AI is super hot shit right now. It's literally blown up overnight. It's everywhere, and it's crazy. So, yeah, it's on all news feeds, it's in all the tech news, it's taking over. And if you're anything like me, then you've got AI overwhelmed, because it's just too much, or it has been. Maybe it's starting to calm down, I'm not sure. But just very quickly, by way of intro to Avi's talk, I wanted to talk to you about the 3 feelings and emotions I've been feeling about AI so far. So, emotional or feeling number 1 was, have they not seen Terminator 2? It's all there. 30 years ago, James Cameron was the Messiah, and the writing's on the wall, basically. So that was fear. Basically, was the first feeling that I had. Like, this is really bad. Like, we're all fucked, basically. Feeling number 2 was, I'm just too old for this shit. Like, honestly, like in product, we have to learn stuff all the time. And, you know, it's just like, I've got a stack of books, I've got podcasts, I've got videos, blah, 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 blah. I've got all this stuff to catch up on. And then AI blows up overnight and makes me feel old. And then, number 3, which is kind of where I'm at now, which is like, actually, I've done some reading, I'm calmed down a little bit, I'm not so fearful, and AI could actually be quite useful, which is awesome. So I thought to myself, what if we could get someone from the future who knows about AI to join us tonight and come to this room and tell us everything that they know? And I thought that would be a good idea. So I thought maybe we could hire a Terminator, a T800, T1000, or we could get Super Avi in the room, and he was cheaper, quite honestly. No, I'm joking. He was available, and he's here with us tonight. So Avi, everyone, is going to do our first talk. He's currently the head of product design for store localization at Shopify. Give it up for Avi. Sir.
Hi everybody. What a lovely day. I want to ask you a couple of questions as I start. Okay, it's not Terminator over there anymore. Just so I can get like the vibe of kind of who is in the room. Who of you is doing product? PM product. Okay. Who is doing design? Cool. Devs? Anything that I missed? Marketing? Research? Sounds good. All right, that's lovely. It gives me like a good picture of kind of what we have. So without further ado, let's dive in. So today I'm going to talk to you about some practical examples, things that I've done in the company at Shopify with AI, and how you can utilize that for your processes as well. I will also talk to you about the future and what it looks like, and give you some ideas of where things are going, but also would love to, I have a hand-down mic, I can just like go around and kind of ask you questions, so feel free to raise your hand and ask some questions. What do you know about AI? I know that it's a generic question. What do you know about AI so far? Can anyone here give me a definition of what it is? Fiona?
It's based on generative language models, and it's about like statistically thinking which words will go together based on a giant bank of information, basically.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. So yes, these are statistical models. They predict what's coming next, kind of like autocorrect. That's like a way to kind of think about that. And to think about what's next could be scary, but could also be like really, really, really positive. Anyone else has other definitions or anything that they... No? Okay, cool. So, this is what we're going to do today. So, we're going to talk about what is AI, I'm going to give a bunch of examples. We're going to look at the approach of how maybe we should think and utilize AI, and then we're going to talk about the future. So, AI by itself, you probably heard of Midjourney. You've heard of ChatGPT. Don't know if you've heard of Pi, but it's kind of like ChatGPT, more like a soundboard that you can talk to. And at the end, I'm sure you all know from reading, AI and the creation that comes from AI comes in the variety of mediums that we are used to consume. Text, audio, video, images, and they're all kind of like accelerating and developing very fast, potentially also 3D models, and there are cross-correlation between them. Interesting things happen when one feeds the other. So if you want to get a good Midjourney image, you ask ChatGPT to create a prompt for you based on a sentence, because a sentence probably will not do very well. It creates 200 words, and then you get a beautiful picture at the end. At the end, AI, as Fiona mentioned, you parse a lot of information, and at the end, you get content. Or alternatively, you might be able to get a decision. Content perspective, we talked about the variation. Decision, you can imagine this kind of goes in the world of finance, fraud analysis, should I give that person a loan, and variety of other aspects like that. Now, this is a list of things that I'm going to go through and kind of give you, again, a bunch of examples of where I used it. So the first one is inspiration. And when you work in product development, you do get a lot of data. You get input from merchants, users. I'm saying merchants because I'm used to it from Shopify. You get input from users in a variety of forms, either through user interviews, through feedback on a variety of forums. Maybe you have uploaded videos to YouTube and they make videos about you. You have competitors who are posting variety of PRs and press releases, etc. And you're looking for a way to kind of parse all this information and get an output, get summaries, right? We all know that summary is something that is quite used today. But you can also use ChatGPT to ask it for an opinion about a specific thing that you've created. If I go towards the explainer, you can get a piece of code, for example, that the developer had wrote, and ask it to interpret and give you all what each command is doing, so you'll be able to understand what the code is doing. And there is something, for example, that I've done historically. If I want to kind of go and make a change in the application, and I want to understand how the technology works, you don't have to necessarily go and query the developer themselves. You can just go and utilize that. Now, in order to do that, you probably need a private GPT. At Shopify, for example, we do have a private GPT where we can throw in data from the company, and we know that it's not going to go anywhere else. And therefore, we are able to just get the answers with the proprietary data that is Shopify owned. The first ones are quite simple, right? So the first ones are things that you probably have heard of, but as we go down below, you'll kind of see some more varied, weird experiments. The other thing is having a contrarian. Usually when you write a proposal or when you're starting a project, you have a bunch of assumptions, you have a bunch of risks in mind, and running it through an LLM can really help you understand what is the opposite opinion of you. And there is something that usually you would need to get to a meeting to, but with this thing you don't necessarily need to. You can be, here's my presentation. What are potential questions that someone is going to ask me about this presentation? Or here's my proposals. What are the holes? What am I missing over here? And you can do that through creation, creating the structure or the proposal, and you can define later on which pieces of the structure you're eliminating or not, essentially editing, right? Because at the end, we get output, we edit. Or alternatively, you can provide it output and have it edit for you or critique it for you. We all know also that you can have it write in a different tone, but usually I don't find that like super helpful. I find it more helpful, for example, for merchants where they have like a brand language that they're using across their store, and they want to keep writing in that specific language, or they want this thing to get parsed through different languages in that specific kind of tone. For example, if they want to translate their store into German, French, etc., etc. In addition to that, there's like alternatives. So you can, very similar to Midjourney, etc. Midjourney is, if you think about it, is a little bit stupid. You need to prompt again and again and again and again. Whereas with ChatGPT, you can provide feedback and it learns from that. You don't need to repeat the same action again. And we'll talk a lot about feedback in this talk and like why it is important. At the end, there's a lot of input that we're inputting into the models, and we think, because we're used to from Google, we think that we can query and interact with these models in a very simplistic way. We're not going to write the whole sentence. We're going to write a bunch of keywords and expect some sort of result from that. But that's not really how it works. And it will work better if you will try to talk to it more like a human rather than just like a bunch of keywords. In terms of data consumption, so you can imagine that you have a lot of data, for example, a graph that talks about conversion in a specific funnel. You can feed that funnel into the process and say what you're trying to do, and you will get a variety of proposals of what potentially you can do in that funnel to improve it. You can even throw sketches in, and it will, as ChatGPT, kind of OpenAI demonstrated, napkins drawing can turn into an HTML code. And then there is transformation. So I can give you an example where we had a meeting. The meeting was about, I cannot say what, but the meeting was about like a decision that we really wanted to make. And the product team really focused and wanted to go ahead and run this test live. But there was a lot of resistance from the stakeholder. And we basically got to like, okay, let's pass it to the next stakeholder, like a higher stakeholder to make a decision. What I did was I took the content of the meeting, the recording, ran it to get transcriptions, and asked ChatGPT to give me pros and cons that were discussed in the conversation, and used it to write a document. But documents are quite long, right? So that's not very engaging. So I took those pros and cons and I said, okay, can you make me a script where there is someone who's for the idea and someone who's against that idea? And I went and recorded. Because Shopify is fully remote, I do a lot of videos. I probably will produce like 4 videos a week, more or less, where posted, whether it's like team updates or a variety of things that we kind of want to post. So I filmed myself twice, one time sitting in this chair, one time sitting with this chair, with a different shirt, and I basically ran that dialogue of that meeting and shortened it into 2 minutes. And that enabled the stakeholder that I wanted to kind of like pitch it to, because they're so important that it's a little bit hard to even get a meeting with them. So I needed to kind of have a preface. So there was a really thorough document with all the details and all the data analyzed. But there was also this like 2 minutes video of me basically debating with myself based on kind of ChatGPT. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about transformation. These transformations are like very powerful, and you can flip it in any way you want. You know that there are kind of marketing firms that are looking at this and are saying, okay, we can take this like blog post, and the blog post will turn into a linking post, will turn into several tweets, will turn into an image from Midjourney, will turn into a campaign. All these things were like quite manual in the past, and in product management you can totally utilize those things. You need to communicate with multiple stakeholders in different lengths, in different varieties, and if you establish those templates, you can essentially do it in no time, really. So, you know, if we look at just where we were like so far, it's very easy to start something. It's easy to produce something and get something back. It's easy to convert the something into a variety of different outputs, which is what you need to communicate with a variety of different people. The only thing you need to do is edit a little bit and probably record a video if you want it kind of to be maintained and keep. So that is kind of something that is worth. Now, the next thing is kind of maths. And what do I mean by maths? Sometimes when you work with a lot of data, you work with a lot of manual data, and sometimes the LLM is not going to be very good at just like copy pasting like piles of like Excel sheets or anything like that. So until someone is going to come and produce spreadsheets that have smartness into them in that level, which I'm sure someone will probably in the next 3 months, what you are capable of doing is ask ChatGPT to provide a variety of formulas for you. I'll give you a case. So at Shopify, if you have a store and you can work on your theme, imagine that you want to go and you're working on a new theme for your store, let's say for Black Friday or anything like that. But while you work on that theme, you still work on your store. Things still change. So essentially what happens is that the product that you're working on, the store that you're working on in the future is missing some of those things that you currently work on right now. And if you think about it even more so in the constellation of international, if you are now added a bunch of products and you made some changes and you translated all of that, the longer the time goes, it's like maintaining two kind of code bases or maintaining two kind of productions. There is more and more gap between the two. So in order to help a merchant, we just like went and asked, you can export your whole store in a CSV, right? How can we cross-match and just find the things that have changed and let the merchant basically deal just with them individually? We went to ChatGPT, queried all that stuff, got a few formulas, boom. We're able to turn in a 40,000 kind of rows and columns spreadsheet into 100 digestible things that the merchant, 100 steps basically that the merchant now needs to do in order to make it work. That would have taken them hours if they needed to do this thing manually. It would have taken us hours to try to do it in code, or like even like try to support just by assuming what's going to happen. These type of things are things that, you know, the merchant probably will not think today doing them, and it's quite hard to compare kind of like befores and afters, especially with the current platform. But I expect that a scenario like this would be quite difficult in a variety of other platforms. In any migration, you will have these kind of inconsistencies. And that's why ChatGPT, etc., they're very good at also like migrations and tests and variety of things. They find things that is harder for us to find. It takes longer for us to find. The last example that I want to give, the last example I want to give is more of a weird, quirky example related to kind of behavior analysis. So one of the things that I was very curious about was how directors at Shopify work and operate. So it is hard to kind of like go and find them in all the channels, etc., etc. And because that's my aspiration, that's what I want to be, I wanted to document all these behaviors and see how I can mimic that and grow for myself. So I asked ChatGPT to create a bot inside Slack that will basically go and collect and inform me every time a design director posts something, and will categorize it, what type of post it is, whether it's they're celebrating a victory that their team had, or they're kind of like giving a variety of feedback, etc. And what I got in return is, you know, and I also looked at the variety of levels. How many times X level posts in Slack, for example. And I was able to find that like directors post X amount of time, and really the level below post a little bit more, and the level below post a little bit more, and like the lower you go, you post more, because you need more visibility. Essentially, again, this is my assumption, your reach as a person is way higher when you're higher up. So if you're below, you need to just like post way more. And that informed my behavior and also allowed me to know if I post too much, how am I in comparison to my peers. And this, again, this is like one aspect of work. This is me just wanting to be like visible, wanting to be there, and kind of make sure that the other teams are also knowing what I want. So how does these kind of like manifest or map into kind of areas of product creation? So in product creation, you have the shaping. So you can see all these on the top are related to the shaping of the process, then the developing, the analysis, the optimization and maintaining of your culture, product, whatever you're building. Have you ever had a dishwasher? You had a dishwasher. Did you ever put something in the dishwasher and it came out not clean? Did you learn from it? Did you more or less know did you more or less know right now what you should do different to make sure that all the dishes, do you organize your dishes slightly different to make sure that everything gets clean at the end of the dishwashing? This is essentially what's happening today with AI. A dishwasher is a very simple thing, or a microwave is a very simple thing. You sometimes put X time and you don't know if the meat is going to be hot or not. It's just a few buttons. Why can't we get it right? The slots, I put the plate there. Why is the plate not clean? Well, because it's not perfect and it doesn't work like that. The problem is that the perception of today for people from AI is that they write like a simple thing and they get everything in return. Everything needs to be perfect. And I've seen a lot of people that are saying, yeah, it's not going to replace humans. It's not good enough. And it's not good. And I'm not going to tweak with it again because they invested 5 minutes talking to this thing. Sorry, it doesn't work with 5 minutes. It probably works with a little bit more. You need to invest slightly more. There are people, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a prompt engineer. I'm saying is people need to kind of invest a little bit more time to get expertise and get good and utilize it. It's a working tool. It's not something that delivers you the final output. And if you think about like all the inputs that we're now providing, the goal for us is to create what VCs would call this thing, the data flywheel. If you think about it, those models are created by querying X amount of like parameters and kind of keywords, etc. There's only so much data in the world. How much data can we feed? Will the data be over? Well, if you keep using the product, the data will never end, which is kind of what Facebook's advertising kind of mechanism works on. People keep creating. Facebook doesn't care who creates what where. They just care that this is the place where they post it. And they will kind of like figure out the ad that works together with those specific things for the specific person. Think of all the variety of products that we're consuming. Most of them are not as matched to you as a person in comparison to Facebook. What they did from that perspective is quite incredible. So if we think about AI, the thing that VCs want to create is this data flywheel. But for us, how can we create our own data flywheel? Well, I believe that in the future, we're gonna get to a place where instead of us like inputting things and ChatGPT forgetting that we put it, as maybe you know, ChatGPT remembers like just the specific conversations that you have with it. And if you come and log in from or create a new chat, it doesn't recollect the previous conversation. Moreover, there's like a limit to how long the conversation can be, because if it's too long, you won't be able to even kind of remember. You won't be able to send that amount of parameters for you to parse to get like a return back. So there is a lot of companies who are like now growing the number of parameters that you can feed into it. And what does that help us with? If you're someone, for example, who writes a lot in Notion, summarizes book, in the future, you might be able to just like do voice notes and variety of things. There are really interesting companies like, for example, Rewind.ai, and what they do is they continuously record your screen. So if you're like a week in the future and you're like, oh, I had this meeting with Josh and he showed me this like blue prototype and I don't know where it is, you can just like search for it and boom, it's gonna get you there. Now this is just parsing for search, but imagine that all your life, everything that you accumulated, and I know it's a little bit scary as well, can be fed into this thing, and it will learn your style. It will basically be your replica, in a way, your digital replica, and would allow you to create this data flywheel where your experiences feed and create and improve the model. Now, as you can imagine, probably in the future, there's going to be a variety of business models that utilize experiences of others, right? So I want to know how to stock, to kind of do stocks, for example. I can kind of take the life of a person, of a stockbroker, add it to my LLM, and boom, suddenly I have these kind of like features added into me. Almost like extensions of a variety of memories of people, and I'm pretty sure that hedge funds today kind of have the variety of things like that. So this is essentially the aspiration. Today we input extremely manually. In the future, it's going to be easier to input. And in the future, you're going to be able to just feed in inputs that are not made by you. You just plug in extensions. If you had a chip in your brain, you'd be like, hey, today I want to, I don't know if you ever saw like Big Hero 5. Have you seen that movie? Right? So like the kid is like putting a tape, and now suddenly his robot knows how to kickbox. Right? These type of things will be things that we will be able to kind of interact with. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So I think the conclusion is we also provide the feedback. If you know, today when we write in ChatGPT, you have this like thumbs up, thumbs down, because what the model really wants to know is whether they did a good job, very much like us. And you'd be surprised how much better results you're gonna get in the continuation of the conversation if you're like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted from you, now let's expand it to this, rather than just go and expand it to this. It's weird. It's weird that we need to give this thing compliments for it to feel good about themselves, but really, there is no way for this to know that it did a good job. And if it doesn't do a good job, it just acts like a human being who's insecure. And it's a problem. So I'd love to get some questions. One other example that I wanted to give before we go into questions is there is a really interesting startup called Chord. And what Chord does is it enables you to kind of like work across a variety of systems. So you can go and, for example, if you're in Google Analytics, you can put a pin in something and tag it to a specific Jira ticket, and it basically, on top of things, create a weaving net of how everything is connected. And if you can imagine today when you talk to ChatGPT, again, it doesn't have memory and it doesn't have sight. It doesn't know what you're seeing. But in the future, you might imagine that you have it over there on the side and it knows what's in your browser. It knows what you're looking at. And you're like, how do I get out of this page? And it would look at the page and would let you know how you get out of this page or how you get that specific deal. It will be way more contextual because it will have more senses. And I think in a way that's kind of what Chord does. So it's not exactly what they do. They don't do it with AI, but I think the paradigm of what they're trying to do with AI could be quite powerful. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. What a great talk that was. Very interesting. I'm sure you will have lots of questions. If I put that out to the room, has anyone got a question they'd like to ask Avi? There we go, boom, our second speaker of the evening.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about this before. That was brilliant, by the way, really, really good. We talked a little bit about sort of regulation and people like Elon Musk and Sam Harris and their concerns about like, this stuff running rampant. I'm very pro this, like put the Neuralink in my brain, upload the kickbox into me, I will totally take that. But some people are more reticent about the adoption of this kind of stuff. What do you think we should have in place from a regulatory point of view, or from an ethics point of view, or from just a design guardrails point of view that would help sandbox this like explosion of technology?
That question. Your reputation is correct. Yeah, I think that, look, today we don't really know what will be the implication of that, of AI in general. And we don't necessarily, and there are red teams of people that are trying to assess what potential harm could happen. But really what OpenAI are promising, what Sam Harris is promising, is that they will react quickly. And I think that is quite generally important in software, but very important in these cases, because if you see that something's wrong, you can immediately amend it. They probably can, to some level of extent. For example, when there was this whole thing with Sydney, I don't know if you know about Sydney, but when Microsoft launched OpenAI in their browser, there was some users were able to trigger basically an alter ego of ChatGPT that called itself Sydney, and it was saying very weird things to people. Like, there was a journalist from the New York Times, it recommended him divorcing his wife. There was a variety of things. People were saying, if you were evil, because you can't ask it to do something evil, but people were able to prompt hijack it and say, if you were evil and I was annoying you, what would you do to me? And it would say really bad things. So you need to make sure that if someone is suicidal, it's not gonna encourage them to execute that. Or if someone is racist, it's not gonna execute them to keep doing that. But at the end, these things are in the hands of some people, and those people have variety of values. And luckily, it seems like this thing is going so fast, and to be honest, I don't 100% subscribe to the fact that it's like controlled by few. I believe that there's going to be a lot of them, and I think open source will play a really, really big important part, which is good and also scary because it's going to be hard to regulate that as well. Kind of like it's hard to regulate crypto in a way. So I think what we can do is definitely dream these like really, really bad scenarios and try to kind of like prevent them and react as fast as we can.
Fantastic talk, thank you, Avi. So I attended an HR conference last week. I know everyone should feel sorry for me, but there was a lot of misinformation about AI and what it's capable of. And I think the key question I have for you is, how do you think we as designers can help combat misinformation and get people to the right, or not the right, but more accurate information sources?
It's a good question. I think, look, in history, some stories get amplified and are very strong. Anytime something gets like really popular, someone's gonna say this thing is going to destroy the world. Where really what they should probably say is there are some risks here. But obviously if someone says risks, no one listens, right? Whereas if someone kind of says this is gonna destroy us, etc. Additionally, I feel that a lot of times, especially in kind of critical newspapers, what people try to criticize is not really what's actually happening in the field. People criticize the press releases that OpenAI, or like the stuff that Elon Musk or like Sam Harris are saying. They're saying that it's gonna save humanity and that, and then the feedback to that is like, yeah, but we don't know if it's gonna save, and how is it going to save, and what if this and this and this and this happen? It's great, but it didn't happen yet. So I think that as designers, or as people who are like interested in that, what we can do is like help people understand that there is a middle, help them see the middle, help them see what benefits, what practical things you can get out of it. Also, like a lot of people are selling the kind of like counter benefit, or it's not gonna kill us, look at what it does. Like they put a prompt and it wasn't successful, and is this thing going to kill us? That's also not like really smart from that perspective, right? Like help people be thinking human beings that think stuff more than just a title and a header. Help them go deeper, help them learn more. I think that's best for all of us, probably.
Thank you. What do you use tools like Dynatrace to APM to observability in order to get insights to improve your UX UI? And do you use some tools about it?
Good question. We don't use these things. Like, I think that it depends on your scale. And I think it depends on like the processes that you have in mind. So I think that at Shopify, for example, probably the best kind of data-oriented company that I've worked for so far, we probably have like everything that we need, dream of, and if we dream of something that we don't have, it's relatively very easy to get it. What is useful is to take that data and like find ways to package it and understand things from it, from the UX perspective, from a conversion perspective, from behavior perspective. Obviously, nothing kind of replaces, talking to merchants, to users. I feel like it specifically in talking to talking about Askable. Talking to users, it's something, or analyzing like research pieces. I don't feel like there is like a good answer. There are some platforms that like say, hey, we're gonna take this like data from users, we're gonna output like the things that people said and you should or shouldn't do. I just don't think the systems are sophisticated enough to dictate input well enough and dictate the sentiment, connect what's happening on the screen to what the person is saying. I think we're still a little bit far from that, but maybe when we get to that point, it's gonna be a little bit easier. Did I answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I have other question. Can I?
Yeah.
After?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other point is about BI tools. Which BI do you use? And if you use some, for example, to predictive churn or other thing about it.
Yeah. We build our own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shopify is building kind of their own pipelines. There are some tools that are like kind of weaved across the process, but they are quite complicated, like data pipelines. But at the end, like the majority of it is self-built. There's a lot of things that we do inside the company that is like just self-built.
Thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask, how do you parse data? Because OpenAI is giving kind of plain text in most of the cases. Are you using like tools to parse data to convert it to the format that you need, or how do you do that?
Sure. Tough question. Well, I'm not extremely technical in this field. What I can tell you is that Shopify has really interesting, powerful data from merchants, and we're doing our best to kind of utilize that to the benefit of the merchants. Whether it's specifically now we allow merchants to kind of write descriptions for product, so they might upload a picture of a shoe, and we might have a title, and we'll ask them for a couple of words, and then we'll generate a description for that product. Because again, it's one of those things that you need to do thousands of times, and it's quite like mind-boggling. So if you can do it like in bulk, that's very, very useful, and we have a lot of usage for this feature. But how do we keep all of that? I don't think it's a question for me. Yeah.
Thank you. I had a quick question about how you stay on top of the new tools and how you keep yourself educated and kind of out there, so that you and mitigating against overwhelm, which was one of the points at the beginning.
Good question. Everyone heard the question, right? Yeah. Okay. Three ways. I really like TDLR AI newsletter. I feel like it provides you with, usually it's too late for me, like usually like half of the things that are there I already know by the time I get it. But for someone who's like not like connected to tech news in their vein, it's really, really nice. I would also say, I will give you the name after, but there is a guy on YouTube who makes amazing videos, and I don't Neil something. I'll give you the name after. He's awesome, and personally, for someone more visual and auditory like me, I prefer to consume everything in video in XX speed. And the last thing is, in work we have like a team that kind of focuses on that, and they do also share quite a lot of things.
Thanks, Avi. That was one of the questions I actually had for you, was just how quick were Spotify to adopt the whole kind of world of AI? Shopify, sorry. I don't know where that came from. Shopify, sorry.
Yes. You're not the first person that... my dad, he works for Spotify. No, I don't. I wish I could compare and tell someone that like this is better than the other one or whatever. I just hard to compare. Super on top of it. It's a major goal for us to use that to allow merchants to bring their stores. We're trying to implement it everywhere. We work extremely close with OpenAI. This is one of the benefits of working in a company like Shopify. Yeah, it's just like it's super important to the company. We're fully on top of it, and there's going to be shitloads of really, really cool stuff coming soon. Yeah.
So we're testing it at the moment, and because it's trained on past data, it may not be brilliant at predicting the future. And so I thought, like, my question is, what do you think of its creative abilities, and like, have you tested the limits? Like, what do you think of the ability to generate new ideas, and have you trialed anything like that?
Yeah, I can tell you that my team was the first team at Shopify in September 2022 that did like a campaign with Midjourney images. So, and as you can tell, I'm really on top of it. This is what I was talking about, like input. I think that one of the main problems is that you train on something, and then you finish this thing, and now you go and good luck in this new world where things have changed, but the software actually doesn't know about it. So I think there's going to be something really interesting about these add-ons, about the ability to kind of get feedback visually on what you're doing more than what you're writing to it. I think this is going to be the key for like staying up to date. I don't think it impacts creativity necessarily. It's really interesting to see specifically kind of in the world of image generation that you have like so many models, and you can like permutate with Dream Booth and Stable Diffusion. You can permutate everything that you do in multiple ways, and it's basically what you choose, like what algorithm you choose to get the result that you want to get. Most people don't bother, like, they will not try it on Midjourney 5.1 and 5 and 4 and see like what the differences are. It's a shame, but I believe that there's going to be like products that will basically go and like render it in like multiple ones and give you the best one. In addition, I think that the startup is called Corporate Photo AI or something like that. What that person did is he took variety of models to take one photo of you and turn it into like a corporate, something that you would put on the site, but he's using multiple models in circulation one after the other to get the best result that they do. So I think that these kind of combinations, these like pieces of the puzzle, it's all available, and there's going to be a fierce competition between like whatever Google and OpenAI are doing with open source. You can see that they're playing, like Facebook kind of released things to open source, OpenAI releasing. Historically, Google did, although they did stop because they don't probably want to kind of get OpenAI like really, really fast. I think the best products you will see and the best kind of creativity or like preciseness that you will get will be through sequencing all those models. And that's why you need to be like a little bit kind of into it. For the regular person, I've seen many people that, you know, will generate something and then will Photoshop it and then will kind of regenerate it based on the Photoshop until they get to where they want to get. It's probably not a process that everyone will follow. But, you know, even for simple things, hypothetically, if you want to, I don't know, make your kids like walking, you know, on Everest, for example, you won't be able to get your kids into Midjourney, right? Because there's like variety of like, you don't want to create a deep fake. There's like ethical issues. You don't know, no one knows that they're your kids, etc., etc. So I believe that there's going to be like variety of services that basically solve that and lets you do that just by, you know, you providing the specific credentials that you are you, etc., etc. I think, you know, again, identifying you in this new world where our voice can be replicable in 3 seconds. And our face can be replicable, and people can move our face. It's going to be essential. This is going to be like a really big industry, probably. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Avi. Thank you, Avi, so much for essentially lifting the lid on such an interesting and complex subject, making me feel a bit less fearful about it as well. So thank you. I'll sleep well tonight. Yeah, and thank you everyone for your awesome questions as well. So.